All right, so today we're going to talk some more about factoring, but instead of it being 1x squared, there's actually going to be a number besides 1 there. So, characteristics of a polynomial can change. The method used to factor polynomials. In this lesson, we're going to look at trinomials. Again, that has 3 terms. Trinomials with leading coefficients or a value for a, meaning a is not 1. Okay? Things that we can do. We always need to look to see if there is a GCF. Is it in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c? Okay, that's called standard form. If it's not like that, we'll have to change it that way before we can do anything. Or is it in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c? So we have an example here. So we're going to look at this checklist and we're going to look at what we have over here. Is there a GCF on 2x squared plus 14x plus 20? 2. So yes. We talked about yesterday when you have a GCF, it goes outside the parentheses. And what is it actually doing to our numbers in our trinomial? We are dividing. So we're essentially going to divide all these by 2. And what do we get? What is 2 divided by 2? 2x squared divided by 2. X squared plus 7x plus 10. It's really important that you look for that GCF first because that's going to make your numbers much smaller, especially when we have to list those factors. So, is our polynomial in the form of just x squared plus bx plus c? Yes. So then you would do what we did in our previous lesson with grouping or snowflake or box, whichever you prefer. Okay, which way do we want to factor this? What did we prefer yesterday? The box, okay? So we're going to do backwards box. So I'm going to draw my little box here. Ooh, that's kind of tiny. I should probably make that a little bit bigger. Remember we said A goes here, C goes here. Pay attention to your signs. C is positive. What does that mean about your symbols? They're gonna match, and it happens to match B. So something X, both positive. We talked about A times C yesterday. So my A is 1. So I need the factors of 10 that will add to be 7. So I've got 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Which of these gives me 7?
2 and 5.
2 and 5. And then you can take out your GCF from your box. So we've got X. I ran out of space here. X, I'm going to squeeze it in there. And then X times 2 is 2X, and X times 5 is 5X. So my final answer here is, don't forget that GCF you already took out. 2 times the quantity of X plus 2 times the quantity of X plus 5. So that was what we did yesterday. So this was our final answer. And in order to check it, we're going to graph in Desmos our original and our answer. All right, so for next, we're going to look at step 1 and 2 of the checklist for this next example. And what do we notice? So step 1 says, is there a GCF? Do we have a GCF on this? No. So no GCF. So since we don't have a GCF, do we end up in the format of ax squared plus bx plus c? No. It's going to have just that 1x. So there's no GCF to take out. So we are now going to have an a that is a value that is not 1. Okay? So that's what we're going to focus on today. So to factor the polynomial when a is a number, we can use grouping, which you guys decided that you did not like. So we will use the backwards box. You could also use the snowflake that we talked about yesterday. Okay? So we are not going to do grouping on our examples. We'll use backwards box. We still have to do the A times C, though. No matter which method we choose, we have to do the A times C. So I realize they've already put some stuff here for us, but we're just going to have to work around it. So there's no GCF. So let's draw our box. We need to make sure we label it exactly like we did before, right? A goes here, C goes here. So I'm going to have, the only difference is that my A is now a number. We still have to think about our signs. C is positive. So if you don't remember, let's make a little note up here. We have some space. If B is positive and C is positive, then we are doing positive and positive, right? Because the only way to get a positive number when we multiply is a positive times a positive. Or if B is negative when C is positive, negative times a negative is a positive. If C is negative, then it has to be different signs, positive, negative. So if our C, which is 5, is positive, that means our signs are going to be the same. And we got to look at B. So they're both going to be what? Both going to be positive. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill those little spaces in. Let's fill in these blanks so we know what we're going to do next. We're still going to find two integers that have a sum of B. That's our middle term. And their product is A times C. A times C, just like yesterday. We're going to rewrite our middle term in the box. Okay, so we're not, since we are deciding not to do grouping, right? We're not going to do grouping here. We're just going to rewrite our middle term using the integers in step 1 in the box. We're still going to take a GCF out from each row or column, and we'll rewrite our factors. Let's start with our A times C. Well, what's my A? 3. What's my C?
5.
3 times 5 is? 15. All right, we're going to make a chart with our factors of 15. Remember, we start with 1. We're just going to go down the list. 1 works. 1 and 15. Does 2 work? No. Does 3 work?
Yes.
3 and? 5. Does 4 work? No. And we've already got the 5 in there, so we're finished. So we're looking for which of these, or you can look down here in your box, which of these adds to be a positive 8? 3 and 5. It doesn't matter which one you put in which box, just like yesterday. And now we're taking out our GCF from each row and each column. So let's look for a GCF. Going across here, what's the GCF between 3x squared and 3x? What do they have in common? 3x. So now you're just kind of working backwards to fill in the rest. 3x times something is 3x squared. Just 1x or just x. And then you can either go across or down. So I have 1x times something is 5x. 1x times something is 5x. 5, what kind of 5? Positive, signs matter. And 3x times something is 3x. What kind of 1? Positive. So here is our answer. Are you ready? 1x plus 1, or you could just write x plus 1, and 3x plus 5. You could write 3x plus 5 times x plus 1 if you wanted. Either way is correct. Should you plug this into Desmos to check it? Absolutely. I'm going to do number 2. Now, number 1 and all of the examples are in the PDF on the calendar. So let's start with step 1 is there a GCF here? Do we have a GCF between 2 and 9 and 7? No. Okay, so step 2 says draw your box and set it up. So we have 2x squared. We have 7. It's a positive 7. Pay attention to your C. C is positive. Are our signs the same or different? They are the same, and they happen to match B. What is B? Positive. So I have a positive x and a positive x. Remember, together they need to equal what? They need to equal 9. They need to equal the B, right? We have A here, we have C here. Together they equal the B. Step 3 is A times C. So my A is 2, my C is 7. What's 2 times 7? 14. Now we're making our T-chart. What multiplies to be 14? 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Now, C is positive, so we're adding which of these adds to B? 2 and 7. Again, it doesn't matter where you put it. Now we're taking out the GCF. What's the GCF between 2x squared and 7x? It's the only thing they have in common. Just the x. So if I have, what times x is 2x squared? 2x. If it helps you to put the 1 here so you're looking at those coefficients, guys, you're essentially dividing this. You're saying 2x squared divided by x is 2x, like when we did dividing polynomials in our first part of the unit. Okay, so let's finish it out. 1x times something is 7x. What kind of 7? Put a sign. Positive. 2x times what is 2x? Positive 1. So our answer here, our factors are 2x plus 7 and x plus 1. And that, along with your original equation, is what you would put into Desmos to see if they overlap to check your work. All right, so on this one, we just need to pay attention to our signs. Start with, do we have a GCF between 6 and 11 and 3? No. If that 11 was a 12, then we would, but it's not. So we're going to set up our box. Remember, we have A, we have B, we have C. 6x squared, positive 3. Together, these need to equal that negative 11x. So pay attention to your signs. C is positive. Are the signs going to be the same or different? How do we get a positive when we multiply? Negative times a negative or a positive times a positive, and B is negative. So this is going to be a negative something x and a negative something x. Step 3 says A times C. What's A? 6. What's C? 3. 6 times 3 is? 18. So what makes 18? 1 and 18. 2 and 9. 3 and 6. Now, here's the part that some people mess up on. Yes, we use our C sign to figure out the signs in our box, but it also tells us what to do. It's a positive. So which of these numbers adds to give us 11? 2 and 9. 2, 9. And then we're going to take our GCF because now our box is set up. So what is a GCF between 6x squared and 2x? 2 and x. So we have 6x squared. Remember, you can think of it as division, or you're filling in the blank when you multiply. 6x squared divided by 2x, or you can say something times 2x is 6x squared. What do we get? 3x. And then you can go from there and fill in the rest, right? 3x times something is negative 9x. Or you could say negative 9x divided by 3x is what? Negative 3. Good job on the sign. And then 2x times something is negative 2x. Negative 1. So if we are going to write our factors, our answer, 3x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. If we were to do FOIL on that, we should end up with 6x squared minus 11x plus 3. Again, you can graph them both in Desmos to make sure they overlap to check your work. 5, can you take out a GCF? That needs to always be your first step. Yes, what's a GCF between 3 and 90? 3. Guys, when you do this, it's really, really important. I'm just going to come over here on the side. I'm going to write my 3, and I'm going to put my 2 parentheses here. So I don't forget when I write my answer with my factors, I have to have that 3. Okay, then we can simplify, right? 1x squared plus 1x minus 30. Now we're going to draw our box. Set it up. So now it's nice because it's like what we did yesterday, right? 1x squared minus 30. I do want you to notice that this C value is negative. How do we get a negative when we multiply? 1 has to be what? 1 is positive and 1 is negative. Okay? Remember that together, these need to equal. Since they're different signs, we're going to have to subtract them to get 1x. So we're still doing A times C. 1 times 30 is 30. What are the factors of 30 that subtract to be 1? Do we know?
Oh, positive, no.
What do we think? Which of those subtract to be 1? 5 and 6. Which one has to be positive? Because when you have different signs, it does matter.
Negative 5.
-5 and a +6. Okay, now we can take out our GCF. X squared is x times x. X times 6 is 6x. And x times -5 is 5x. So my factors, my answer is going to be that 3 that we took out, that GCF, x plus 6, and x minus 5.
So it doesn't matter where you put them as long as it's the right.
It doesn't matter where you put them as long as the sign going with it is the correct one. Very good question. Paolo has a vintage record player in the shape of a rectangular prism. The volume is 10x squared minus 65x minus 35. Write this as, write expressions that represent the possible dimensions for length, width, and height. Remember that volume is length times width times height. So where do we always start? What's the very first thing we look for? GCF. Is there a GCF? What is it? 5. Guys, that's one of our dimensions. So if I take and I divide all these by 5, now I've got 2x squared minus 13x minus 7. What's after taking out a GCF? The box. Draw your box. Make sure you set it up. 2x squared minus 7. What does that minus 7 tell you?
That's the.
What kind of signs are we going to have?
One positive, one negative.
One positive and one negative. Okay, so we've set up our box. We've got our signs. Now what? A times C. Don't worry about the negative. We're just looking at numbers right now. So 2 times 7 is 14. So 1 and 14. 2 and 7. Do we have any others? No. Okay. So we need it to equal a negative 13. Right? This minus, we're subtracting because they're different. So which of those do we subtract to get 13? 1 and 14. Pay attention to your signs. Which one is a negative for us to get a negative 13?
14.
So we have negative 14 and a positive 1. That's going to make this diagonal negative 13. Now we can take out our GCF. What's the GCF between 2x squared and 1x?
What?
2x squared and 1x? Just 1x, right? They both have x's. Remember, it can be a number, it can be a letter, it can be both. So if I take out 1x, what's going to go on the top? 1x times what is 2x squared? 2x. Okay. 1x times what is 1x? Oh, 1. There's one of our dimensions. Okay, last part. You can either do the 2x times something as negative 14x. You can say 1 times something as negative 7.
So x
Minus 7. There's your other dimension.
I understand it now.
And it should overlap. Okay, that's how you know you did it correctly.